It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Shorman. Welcome to the Forum program here on Eagle TV. Good to have you watching along. Our Forum program is brought to you by Hayes Med. Our guest today is John Thissen. John is the new USD 49 school superintendent, and it's good to have you on our program today, John.
Thank you, Gary.
You know, you've taken an educational course, taking a look at your history of coming into Hayes. Tell us a little bit about your background, because you've served in some really nice communities around the state of Hayes.
Yeah, it's been amazing, kind of the circle that's happened. I started in teaching in Pretty Prairie. I went to Medicine Lodge. I've been at Harrington and worked there with my wife for 4 years, teaching there as well. Moved from there and started building administration in Junction City. Went to Great Bend for a few years there, 4 years there. McPherson was a long stay of 12 years as a building administrator. And the last location was Harrington as a superintendent for 9 years.
Well, you have that, when I mentioned you travel around Kansas, you have a background that really involves everything from teaching to building administration to superintendent, and it's great to see that, and it probably adds to your career when you come here of being the superintendent.
It helps tremendously. My experience of going to Great Bend many years ago, they had a particular project I know I was hired to help with, and that was changing their junior high into a middle school program. In that 1 year that I was there, which was the last year of Harrison Junior High, a lot changed, and they decided to fuse it together to be one building instead of using two, and so there was a lot of adjustments that had to be made there.
Well, you're not new to Hayes, though. Your wife is a graduate of Fort Hays State, I believe.
Well, my wife, my brother, my sister-in-law, my nephew. So
like old home week coming back here.
I'm very familiar with Hayes, yes.
As you start out the new school year, you know, you're coming on board, obviously a lot of things new to you. Heard good things in the school district. Do you have any goals for this year to get started?
Well, I'd say goals would be, one of the critical goals is that relationship with Board of Education, trying to end up understanding one another, trying for me to have the best relationship with them as we move ahead. I know that they have goals. We had a goal-setting special board meeting on a Saturday, that's already a month ago or more. But for them to work through that and identify what are their main 5 goals that they want for this district in the next 3 years was very helpful of providing direction of what we need to be doing.
As you look at that, I know you get an opportunity to meet staff and team. What have you been impressed with so far?
Well, Hayes ends up being a community that I think most communities, not just in Kansas but across the nation, would love to have, of a community that still has 20-some thousand, which is a nice-sized community, especially when you're looking at Kansas, and still have an environment that really is a small town. Very friendly, very helpful, very, moving in, it just makes you feel very welcome in every sense, whether it's at the job or just in the community.
As you make the transition from a Harrington school district to, say, USD 49, it's a bigger size school, any surprises as you come on board?
I wouldn't say surprises. I knew that it was going to be more meetings. You know, there's definitely more communication. There's more entities that have to be involved and connected with. That takes more time. I know that in my particular case, when you're looking at Harrington's small enough, there was many hats that I wore. And to come here, sometimes I find it a little hard giving up some of those hats. I felt I was pretty good at some of them, and it's odd not to be involved in working with some of those particular duties.
I know when you look at the school systems across the state, and there's been a lot of turnover in the superintendent's role.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that's going to be a challenge going forward. Was it one of those things you looked at several different opportunities, or do you like Hayes because it just felt like home?
Well, Hayes felt right, and it felt right. It felt right 3 years ago. I was one of the applicants, and I know that Hayes did what they probably was the smart thing of getting an interim at that time. and it worked very well for them. But I can say I had interest then. So it was nice that I had another opportunity 3 years later to end up putting in an application and try for it again.
Statewide, is there a sort of a new group of new superintendents that are involved across the state as they, really take on the challenges of education?
Well, there's going to be a lot of new superintendents having to come in, because I understand there was, I think 50 some new last year and 60, I think they went over 60 this year. So, or changes. Now, some of that could be just moves of transfers to other positions,
But still a change within the leadership.
Many, yes. And I do believe that group is looking for, help, direction. It's a very challenging time because of trying to understand the changes that come down from the state, and trying to make sure that we follow the directions that's being given to us.
One of the things, I know the challenges came on board and you were successful in working with a bond issue in Harrington. It wasn't as big.
Right.
But one of the ongoing challenges is, I guess, maintaining infrastructure that is work, times change, needs change. So finding a way to work to do that. How are you going to approach that? Not only you, but with the Board of Education.
Right. Well, I feel comfortable from the standpoint of coming in with that experience, and I know that many can look at it as Harrington's a much smaller community. The amount that was granted there was 15 million, quite a bit less than the 90-some million. But another way to look at it is the 15 million was still a greater tax burden on that community than what the 90-some million would be here. So that is another way to look at it. Sure, you're looking at the overall dollars as significant to say, wow, that's a lot more dollars, but you must end up boil it down to basically how does it affect the community as far as the increased tax that they're going to have to deal with. I do believe that the committee here, the Board of Education, really is in a mode of it's moving kind of slow right now after the last failed bond election in June. But I believe that it's all because there's the attempt to gather information from the public, trying to end up knowing, okay, it didn't pass. What is it that was that needs to be changed with it? Because there was a good number that did. It really was, I think, less than 300 votes as far as making that decision. And there was I think it was close to 4,000 votes that was cast. So really a significant number did vote for it. The question would be a matter of gathering from the public, okay, those that did not, why was it? Those that did, what were they most in favor of, and put together a new plan and come back to the public at that time.
Well, I'm guessing just because you showed up on the scene, the need doesn't go away.
Not at all. You end up having, the need that I think drove this for this community, which isn't different than Harrington, was having buildings that were in a position, there were systems within buildings that were well beyond their life expectancy. And we ended up having at Harrington an elementary in which the steam heat, that system was falling apart. And trying to calculate the amount that it would cost to redo that, trying to calculate other costs of bringing up that building to where it needs to be, and then looking at what a new facility would cost. That was so important to the public to end up having that information, looking at it and making the determination of which is the better choice, which do you go with. In the case here at Hayes, I don't think there's any a great difference. You end up having an example of a project that was just last summer where the middle school's heating and air system was changed out, and it was a 53-year-old system. Heating and air is not supposed to, we're not supposed to get that many years out of it. We were very fortunate, and I think that Hayes employees have done a great job of keeping it working to that point. But there were hints that it may not last, and probably great timing to get it switched out. There are many other examples like that one that needs to be considered here at Hayes, and how do we tend to them?
I know one of the other issues ongoing is that ongoing maintenance that has to deal with capital that you put into a
Yes.
plan every year, whether you're running a business like we do at Eagle or whether you're running the school district.
Right.
You really have to plan for that obsolescence of whatever you have. So that's another part of this whole issue that you're going to have to work into the formula as well.
Actually, that may be the bigger part. It may be the part that needs to be considered. And you're exactly right. On a personal level, we try to end up plan for when do we switch out our heating and air? When do we put a new roof on? When do we end up taking a car in for some major work?
Or buying a new car.
Or decide we need a new car instead of waiting for, exactly. For the schools, though, I know you can end up using bond money. That can be used. But the majority of the time you're working from money that you're pulling in on an annual basis, which may not be too much, which is less than what we have had in the past, but we still need to use it as effectively as possible. And there needs to be a plan over not just 2 years, 3 years, but for the schools, there needs to be a plan that's a 10-year, 20-year plan of knowing what are the changes, what are the greatest needs, and plan for that well in advance so you can end up changing putting a roof on, changing the, like I said, heating and air system, plumbing issues. We have some issues in our district that have some really tremendous plumbing issues, and I don't think that's even been brought out to the public that they know that. And how do you deal with that? When you're talking about for the heating and air at the middle school, I think was 1.4 million. When the high school's issues that we are dealing with could be a $4 million project. And how do you fund that just with a capital outlay plan over time, not even considering bond election money, just trying to end up working from that. A very big project, one that needs to be done. And it shouldn't be just a matter of the head maintenance and the superintendent sitting down and talking and go, hey, what do you want to do next year? It should have a much more in-depth data reference to make those decisions as to what's going to be done.
Some of those systems, there are some life-ending things. When an air conditioning system is 50 years old, at some point it's going to give out, and that's going to be the end. Same way with plumbing and some other things that way. But you're right, it's a team effort because it's not just you. The school board also has to be involved with direction for not only the bond issue, but those capital outlays as well.
Exactly. And it's very important. We will talk this evening on this as far as some tools that can be used to try to help with that. We're trying to end up identifying tools that can end up being stretched out over that length of time of a decade, 2 decades, and try to make the very best decisions possible for next year and the year after in using that money.
We're going to take a break. That's enough about the capital and all that serious. Let's talk about the schools themselves when we come back from our break, talk about the kids in the district, some of the neat things that are happening there. Our guest is the new superintendent of USD 489, John Thissen. Back with more after this.
Hayes Med is your first and best choice for healthcare. They're the only facility providing tertiary level services in this region. With more than 70 physicians and 26 specialties ranging from heart, orthopedic, spine care, cancer, obstetrics and gynecology, wound care, rehabilitation and surgery, including the Da Vinci robotic surgery, Hayes Med is your comprehensive health provider for people throughout Western Kansas. Hayes Med, helping people be healthy.
The most exciting yards in football. It's NFL Red Zone from NFL Network. Get every touchdown from every game, every Sunday afternoon. And football doesn't stop on NFL Network. It goes all week.
We're covering it like crazy.
Get NFL Red Zone from NFL Network today.
Add NFL Red Zone so you can watch all the game-defining yards in football. Call us at 877-61-EAGLE today.
Welcome back to the second half of our forum. If you have any questions, ideas, maybe solutions to problems, I'd like to hear those. Send them to me at gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. Our forum program is brought to you by Hayes Med, and our guest is somebody new to our community, has some roots here as well. He's the new superintendent of USD 489. His name is John Thissen. And John, we've been talking about kind of the serious nuts and bolts that goes into the back end of the schools, whether that be capital items, the heater and air conditioning, all that stuff. But on the output side of that, we're raising kids in our community. to be better citizens, to learn, to grow and do that. Tell me about the team that you've run into, the teachers, administrators that you found here in Hayes since coming here.
That's one of the most welcoming part of coming into Hayes is the commitment that this group of people end up having for the Hayes families. They definitely want what's best, given the situation of so many changes that have happened in just the last 5-10 years. And when I say changes, I'm just saying that the needs that do exist and those particular solutions that schools do have in trying to end up working with those families or those children.
Well, you know, one of the things, and you know, I tell my kids I started at a one-room schoolhouse, and they think I'm old as dirt, and I may be, I don't know. But it's changed so much, and also the requirements of what schools can do, what they have to do, and how they make that work. And it just creates a little more challenge, but it also takes an understanding of a lot of really good teachers and administrators to help those kids become successful.
I agree. We end up having new challenges every year, trainings that need to be done. There are different tragedies that occur in our society that then there is the expectation, the desire that the schools can end up assisting with that. That happens all the time. One of them is that suicide prevention program. It's new. It's out there for us to have training for all staff in our schools. Something that before the end of the year or by this next summer we need to end up having that training. That's just one example of many things that we try to help society with. We love to end up thinking that, especially Hayes, which is buffered in many different ways, wonderful community from the standpoint of looking at the difference of it versus maybe a Kansas City or a Wichita, but from the standpoint of really knowing what's here, we have hungry children. You know, we have families that have tremendous needs. We have families that don't have the money really to provide even the clothing that's needed for their children. And that piece, I think, is we deal with it, we know of it in the schools. It's very private, but I would say that clearly our staff could say it's greater than it used to be. And those are things that make it even more of a challenge in trying to tend to the needs of those children, those families.
One of the questions I didn't have, this is one I thought about, but where do superintendents go to get assistance? do you go to this, obviously it's school board, you do that part, but is there ongoing training? Is there things that you go as a group of superintendents across the state or the Midwest to meet?
There are organizations.
Because the issues are similar, I would assume, across the board.
They are, and actually to say that the comparison of a small district and a large district, there are so many of the very same issues you're dealing with. It's just a matter of numbers many times. To end up saying that Harrington does not have issues that are identical to what Hayes may have, well, they are. It's just a matter that there can be more of them in a larger district. And it may be that you just may have one of those items in a small district every 2 or 3 years instead of definitely every year or every month. I find that there's great support, and even this morning having a meeting with the superintendents in Ellis County as well as La Crosse. We met for about an hour and a half, and we ended up talking on items that involved the special needs of students, trying to end up making sure that we have consistency in trying to tend to those needs. And so we do meet, like to meet more often, but we do end up having meetings on a regular basis and try to end up help with each other.
I know statewide there's been an ongoing concern of funding for education, and I'm sure you ran into that in your other positions as well, but it's not any different here in Hayes. Governor Brownback and the plan that's going on seems to have a reduction in funding more than the other way around. Is that fair to say?
It has been. I mean, but I wouldn't just say for schools. I mean, it's affected a number of organizations in the state of having less money. KDOT has less money. I mean, you look across the board. Across the board, there's less money.
So, how do you participate in the statewide program in dealing with education and funding through USD 489?
I would say it's a matter of a vocal piece to local representatives to let them know the concerns that exist. It's a common, I mean, people can say, well, there's never enough money. You know, we just want more, we want more. But at the same time, there's got to be that understanding of looking, if you really do look over time and look at how much money is being used now versus even 20 years ago, it's similar. The total amount is similar as to even 20 years ago. And to consider that we are doing that and trying to do the very best we can with that, I think is commendable for every school district in the state. I would say when we introduce as well technology at a state level of trying to end up introducing that, and some individuals think, well, that's just not realistic. But the other part of it, which is exciting in our schools, is finally doing at the state level. Hayes is doing it as well, but at the state level, they're really pushing, trying to make sure that we are college and career ready. And the terminology is a bit different for everybody to understand in the state, that there's a push to not necessarily push all children, all students when they graduate from high school to that 4-year university. More so trying to work with them to identify, for those that is the way they need to go, great. For those that need to go to a 1 year or 18-month program somewhere and end up having a fantastic job that way, there's many options that exist. And we as a high school, we as a public school needs to do our very best to help students find that path that they're going to do the best at. It's discouraging when not just schools, but even parents get into that mode of, my child's going to go to KU, my child's going to go to K-State, my child's going to go to Fort Hays State University, when maybe they need to understand, what does your child want to do? What is your child really good at? What do they have the best chance of being successful at a few years from now and be happy at and really make a living and have a family at that time.
Let's talk and finish up here with, how can parents be involved? There's a parent out there, a grandparent, somebody. How can they be involved? What's the best way for them to get engaged with their schools?
Good point. We have some very. That's one thing I am really impressed, is how involved the families are in Hayes compared to other communities that I have been in. I have not had any community that comes close to comparing to the involvement that Hayes families or parents are. But definitely at site councils, okay? It ends up being as well a PTA or a home and school organization. It's being involved with their children's extracurricular activities of helping out with that. All of those end up making a great difference in knowing what's happening in the school and voicing their concerns or their suggestions of what needs to be done.
I know people probably don't have trouble finding you if they want, but what's the best way to communicate with you if they have a question about the school district?
Well, I do get emails, and people find that, I'm sure, on the web. That's there. My phone number is there as well, and I've gotten some phone calls. I try to be very accessible and try to go to several of the schools every week and try to be, like as I say, available not just to the public but to the staff as well. But I would say email and phone is still going to be maybe the best way to personally get in touch with me, so I can meet with them or talk with them.
Well, John, we look forward to having you in our community, continuing to grow and watching improvements in education at USD 489. Thanks for being on this program as well.
It's a
I know the
pleasure.
lights are hot and the guest and the host sometimes has trouble, but nonetheless, it's good to have you here.
Thank you very much. It was a
Our
pleasure.
guest is John Thissen, who is the new superintendent at USD 489. If you see him running around, tell him hello. Our program is brought to you by Hayes Med and by Eagle Communication. Our community connected.
It's a beautiful day in our super high-speed internet great customer service neighborhood. Like you, this is where we live. In fact, our company is employee-owned, so it's our goal to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community by delivering faster, more reliable internet, clearer, more feature-laden phone service, quality TV channels, all with the level of customer service you'd expect from people who are your neighbors. Eagle Communications. Our community connected.